It's not as though you were even that great in college. You weren't the feature of your college team. That was Blake Corum. You weren't the feature player of your college team. That was a running-based offense. So I just think for a team that is built to win right now, like you built to win right now, and you're putting this much faith and this much pressure on a kid that ain't played no snaps and was hurt all last season. That's tough.
4 quarterbacks were taken before J.J. McCarthy in the 2024 NFL Draft. Caleb Williams went first overall to Chicago. Jalen Daniels landed with Washington at number 2. Drake May found his home in New England at 3. And Michael Penix shocked everyone when Atlanta grabbed him at 8, just weeks after signing Kirk Cousins to a massive deal. But here's what nobody saw coming. While those 4 quarterbacks were getting all the attention, J.J. McCarthy was quietly prepping for something that's about to break the NFL. Because when you dig into his story, and I mean really dig into it, you start to realize that maybe, just maybe, the guy everyone passed on is about to become the best quarterback from that entire draft class. And in this video, we're going to break it all down for you. On January 8, 2024, Michigan was facing Washington for the national championship with the Wolverines up 34-13, absolutely dominating on the biggest stage in college football. Leading that charge was J.J. McCarthy, a 21-year-old quarterback who had just completed the most dominant season in Michigan history. But this winning thing didn't just start at Michigan. It started way before that. At Nazareth Academy in Illinois, McCarthy went 26-2, led back-to-back state title runs, and brought home a championship as a sophomore. And when COVID hit, and most kids stayed put, McCarthy made a decision that tells you everything about who he is. He packed up his life and transferred to IMG Academy in Florida. Now, IMG isn't just any high school. This is the place where 5-star recruits go to get destroyed by other 5-star recruits. The competition is brutal. The expectations are impossible, and most kids who show up thinking they're hot stuff get humbled real quick. McCarthy didn't get humbled. He got better. That season at IMG, he threw for 1,300 yards and 18 touchdowns while leading the team to a perfect 8-0 record and a national championship. IMG finished as the #1 team in the entire country. But here's what the stats don't tell you. Coaches remember the way he earned trust, commanded the huddle, and led with confidence that you just don't see from teenagers. And like you probably already know, when Michigan came by, things got even more ridiculous. As a sophomore in 2022, McCarthy took over as the full-time starter and immediately did something Michigan fans have been dreaming about for decades. He led the Wolverines to a 13-1 record and a dominant win over Ohio State in Columbus. That might not sound like a big deal unless you know that Michigan hadn't won in Columbus in over 20 years. But 2023, that was the year everything clicked. McCarthy led Michigan to a perfect 15-0 season and a national championship, becoming the first Michigan quarterback to lead the Wolverines to an undefeated national title since 1948. He completed a school record 72% of his passes, threw 22 touchdowns to just 4 interceptions, and did it all while playing within a system that asked him to be smart, not spectacular. The performance was so impressive that Jim Harbaugh, who played quarterback at Michigan himself and spent years coaching in the NFL, would make a statement saying McCarthy might just be the best quarterback in Michigan history. Better than Harbaugh himself, better than Brian Griese, and arguably even better than 7-time Super Bowl champion Tom Brady. Let's put this into perspective for a second. J.J. McCarthy had a 63-3 record across high school and college. 63 wins, 3 losses. That's a 96.4% win percentage that sounds completely made up, but isn't. But if McCarthy was this good, if he won everywhere he went, if Jim Harbaugh thinks he's the best quarterback in Michigan history, then why did 4 teams pass on him? Why was there so much doubt? See, the criticism of J.J. McCarthy wasn't subtle. It was loud, it was everywhere, and it was brutal. Analysts openly questioned his college performance on live television, arguing that he wasn't even that great in college and wasn't the feature player of his team. The narrative was simple and devastating. J.J. McCarthy was a game manager at best, a system quarterback who got carried by Michigan's elite running game and incredible defense. Critics pointed to his limited passing attempts, by far the fewest of any top quarterback prospect in the class. They questioned his arm talent, his creativity, his ability to carry an NFL offense. The Penn State game became Exhibit A for this prosecution. During the game, Michigan was up big in the second half, and McCarthy didn't throw a single pass after halftime. Critics argued that the team didn't even trust him to throw a pass, questioning what that said about his own coach's confidence in him. But here's what those critics missed, and this is crucial. McCarthy wasn't limited because he couldn't handle more. He was limited because he didn't need to do more. When you're completing 72% of your passes and your team is going 15-0, why would you change anything? The draft reflected these doubts perfectly. Caleb Williams, Jalen Daniels, and Drake May were the clear top three. Nobody questioned that. But when it came to the rest of the quarterback class, every single prospect had question marks. For McCarthy, those question marks were massive. He had the least amount of tape throwing the ball downfield. He had the fewest attempts in obvious passing situations. And at just 21 years old, he was the youngest quarterback in the class, which meant he was either the most moldable or the most unknown, depending on how you looked at it. CBS Sports wrote an entire article arguing that McCarthy wasn't worth the massive hype because he lacked the college production and elite physical tools expected of a top 5 pick. Other analysts questioned his long-term value at the position. Even his own college success got twisted into a negative. Analysts claimed Blake Corum was the real star, that Michigan's running game was unstoppable, that the defense carried the team. Every possible way to diminish what McCarthy had accomplished, the critics found it. But while everyone was forced on what J.J. McCarthy couldn't do, the Minnesota Vikings were paying attention to something completely different. You see, Kevin O'Connell had a superpower, and that superpower is making quarterbacks look like Hall of Famers. The evidence speaks for itself. Matthew Stafford worked with O'Connell as the Rams' offensive coordinator and won a Super Bowl. Jared Goff flourished under O'Connell's system before getting traded. Kirk Cousins had some of his best seasons with O'Connell calling plays. And then there's Sam Darnold, perhaps the most perfect example of what O'Connell can do. Darnold came to Minnesota as a journeyman backup with a career-best season of just over 3,000 yards and 19 touchdowns. He was supposed to be a placeholder, a veteran presence to ease J.J. McCarthy's transition into the NFL. Instead, O'Connell turned him into a Pro Bowl quarterback who threw for over 4,300 yards and 35 touchdowns while leading the Vikings to 14 wins. O'Connell took a guy who was basically a backup and turned him into one of the most productive quarterbacks in the NFL. If he can do that with Sam Darnold, then imagine what he can do with a 22-year-old national champion who's been winning at every level his entire life. But O'Connell wasn't the only reason Minnesota was perfect for McCarthy. The Vikings had quietly assembled one of the most talented rosters in the entire league. Justin Jefferson, arguably the best wide receiver in football, a 4-time Pro Bowler who's topped 1,400 yards in 4 of his 5 seasons. Jordan Addison, a certified touchdown machine with 19 scores in just 2 seasons. T.J. Hawkinson, one of the top tight ends in the league when healthy. Aaron Jones, a veteran pass-catching back who brings leadership and reliability. And then there's the investment Minnesota made in protecting their future quarterback. They signed right guard Willie Fry to a massive 5-year, $88 million deal. They brought in veteran center Ryan Kelly on a 2-year, $18 million contract. They used their first-round pick on left guard Donovan Jackson from Ohio State. This wasn't just roster building. This was a declaration. The Vikings were all in on J.J. McCarthy before he'd even thrown his first NFL pass. But then, disaster struck, and everything the Vikings had planned came crashing down in one devastating moment. On August 11, 2024, J.J. McCarthy's NFL career was supposed to begin, and instead, it became the day everything went wrong. McCarthy's preseason debut had been absolutely electric. He completed 11 of 17 passes for 188 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Raiders, showing off the mobility and pocket awareness that had been underrated coming out of college. Viking fans were losing their minds, and this was their quarterback, their future. their missing piece. Until he wasn't. After the game, McCarthy complained of discomfort in his right knee. What seemed like a minor issue turned into a torn meniscus that required surgery and would keep him out of the entire 2024 season. The Minnesota Vikings, who had just traded up to draft their franchise quarterback, now had to place all their faith in Sam Darnold. Most rookies would have disappeared into the background. Most 22-year-olds dealing with their first major injury would have felt sorry for themselves. Most quarterbacks who never faced real adversity would have crumbled under the pressure. J.J. McCarthy did the opposite. Instead, McCarthy called Harrison Phillips, a veteran defensive lineman, just days later asking when they could meet to watch a defensive film together. He wanted Phillips to teach him about defensive concepts so he could better understand what was going through defenders' minds during plays. This is a rookie going through the hardest time of his life, injured in a new city, and he's asking a veteran to educate him about the other side of the ball. Phillips later said this showed him that McCarthy was someone who could play football for a very long time. But that wasn't the only way McCarthy used his injury time. He dove into the playbook like never before. He bonded with teammates. He studied every snap Sam Darnold took, learning from both the successes and the mistakes. He called it a blessing in disguise because it gave him time to develop mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And while McCarthy was growing behind the scenes, something incredible was happening on the field that proved everything the Vikings believed about their roster. Justin Jefferson continued being Justin Jefferson. The defense, led by Brian Flores, was elite when it mattered most. And the Vikings won 14 games with a quarterback who wasn't even supposed to be starting. Here's why that matters for J.J. McCarthy. If the Vikings could win 14 games with Sam Darnold, what could they do with a 22-year-old quarterback who's never lost at any level of football? But the 2024 season also exposed the ceiling of what Minnesota could accomplish with Darnold. When the pressure mounted in the playoffs, when the Rams brought their best shot, Darnold looked like a guy who was playing in over his head. The Vikings got handled in the wildcard round, and it became crystal clear that to take the next step, they needed an upgrade at quarterback. That upgrade is now healthy, motivated, and ready to shock the world. Right now, everything is lining up perfectly for J.J. McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings. First, the supporting cast has never been better. The offensive line went from a question mark to a strength with the additions of Willie Fry and Ryan Kelly. The running game got a power element with Jordan Mason joining Aaron Jones. The defense added game changers like Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, who can rush the passer without requiring Brian Flores to send the house every play. Second, McCarthy is stepping into a situation where the expectations are managed, but the ceiling is unlimited. Unlike other young quarterbacks who are thrust into rebuild situations, McCarthy is joining a team that just won 14 games. The pressure isn't on him to be perfect immediately. It's on him to be the final piece of a championship puzzle. Third, and this is critical, McCarthy has something that can't be taught. He knows how to win when it matters most. His Rose Bowl performance against Alabama, where he threw for 221 yards and 3 touchdowns to beat Nick Saban in his biggest game, proved he's not intimidated by the moment. But here's the factor that nobody's talking about, and it's the reason the Vikings are about to shock everyone. J.J. McCarthy spent an entire year watching Sam Darnold succeed in Kevin O'Connell's system. He saw firsthand how a quarterback with limited arm talent could thrive by making smart decisions and utilizing the weapons around him. He learned the system without the pressure of having to perform in it. And most importantly, he saw exactly where the ceiling was with an average quarterback, and he knows he's better than average. The math is simple. If Sam Darnold can lead his team to 14 wins, what can J.J. McCarthy do? If a journeyman backup can throw for 4,300 yards and 35 touchdowns in this offense, what numbers will a national champion put up? Every great quarterback story has a moment where everything changes. For Tom Brady, it was Drew Bledsoe getting hurt. For Aaron Rodgers, it was finally getting his chance after sitting behind Brett Favre. For J.J. McCarthy, it's right now. The doubters who called him a game manager are about to see what happens when a winner gets weapons. The critics who said he was carried by his college team are about to watch him carry an NFL franchise. The draft experts who ranked him 5th are about to look like they missed the biggest steal in years. Because here's what everyone missed about J.J. McCarthy. He's not just a quarterback who knows how to win. He's a quarterback who makes everyone around him better. Ask his Michigan teammates. Ask Harrison Phillips. Ask Kevin O'Connell. They'll all tell you the same thing. This kid is different. The Minnesota Vikings didn't just draft a quarterback in 2024. They found their missing piece, their franchise cornerstone, their ticket to the Super Bowl they've been chasing for decades. And when J.J. McCarthy takes the field healthy for the first time, when he starts connecting with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, when this offense reaches its full potential under Kevin O'Connell's guidance, the shock is going to be felt from Minneapolis to Miami. 4 quarterbacks were taken before J.J. McCarthy in the 2024 NFL Draft. By the end of 2025, he might just be better than all of them. The only question left is, are you ready to witness the rise of J.J. McCarthy? Drop your thoughts in the comments.